Welcome to today's webinar. Over the next 45 minutes or so, we'll cover a lot of these topics here. We'll talk about social media use cases for higher ed, identifying and planning content that's relevant and engaging to your audience. We'll go through scheduling and how to make the most out of your social analytics. And last but not least, we'll answer your questions at the end or throughout the webinar. So feel free to send in your questions throughout. We might rope it in the conversations or at the end. And without further ado, let me introduce you to our speakers today. We have with us our very special guest, Dan from the University of Waterloo in Canada, as well as Paul, our Senior Customer Success Manager from Emplifi. Paul and Dan, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. And thank you all so much for jumping on and joining our call today. As you know, my name's Paul. I am a Senior Customer Success Manager here at Emplifi. So really what that means is I help a number of different clients across North America, help them to utilize Emplifi effectively. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Emplifi, we'll cover off all the basics today. We'll talk a little bit about specific strategies for higher ed. I've been with Emplifi, before that even Social Bakers, for the past 6 years. I actually just celebrated my 6-year anniversary in June, which is crazy. But I'm also based in Canada and work closely with Dan, who's been great to work with, and we're super thankful to have him on the line with us today. So Dan, I'll let you do a quick intro on yourself as well.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Paul, and thanks, Cher, for having me. It's great to be here today. So as mentioned, my name is Dan Ackerman. I'm the social media manager at the University of Waterloo. I've been in my role for a little over 2 years, and I've been at the University of Waterloo for 15 years. I was in the Department of Athletics and Recreation for about 13 before coming over to University Relations in my current role. So social media manager is just that. I take care of all of our social media platforms, creating content, posting our news stories, research. We have a lot of campaigns that we like to tell digitally, and that's all about telling our story, the University of Waterloo story, over our digital platforms. And you'll learn more about what I do and how we utilize analytics to help create our content and tell our story socially. Waterloo has been leveraging Emplifi's platform since 2019, back when Emplifi was known as Social Bakers. So we've seen the platform evolve and grow significantly over the years. And our long-standing partnership with Emplifi from its early iterations has truly been crucial for the success of our social media platforms at the University of Waterloo. So very thankful for everything that Paul and Cher does for our team at the University of Waterloo, which is just beyond University Relations. It's the entire university. You'll learn more about that as we talk to you today. So thanks so much for joining, and looking forward to telling you all the things we do at the University of Waterloo when it comes to social media.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dan. Cool. So before we jump into more of the specifics, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Emplifi or just really not even sure of exactly what it is that we do, I did want to just talk briefly about this slide, this or sort of half circle. And what it looks at are all of the different areas that Emplifi help businesses across the globe, really. So for today, if you will focus in on the marketing section of the sphere, that is what we're really drawing into today. So looking at items like publishing, paid and organic reporting, content analysis, those types of things, that's what we're going to be drilling into today as far as what we focus on. But I did want to just let you all know on the line, there are a number of different offerings that our organization provides through the lens of either social commerce or social care. And we try to tie it all into what's called our unified analytics offering. So the backbone of Emplifi, and for as long as I've been here, and really the strength of our tool has always historically been focusing on data and the analytics to help drive business decisions, whether that's high ed, whether that's sports teams, whether that's Fortune 500 or small non-for-profits. We try to tie all of that together and try to lead businesses into strategic decision makings through the actual data and analytics that our system provides. So a lot that we can do, but today we're just going to take a small subset, or not a small, we're going to take a subsection of what we do from the social marketing lens, and we're going to drill in and talk more specifically about that. So would definitely encourage, I should have mentioned off the top of the call, we definitely want this to be an interactive discussion. So if there's anything you'd like to share, any questions that you have, please feel free, drop questions in the chat, or however you'd like to. We definitely would love to hear from everyone on the line and make it a little bit more of a collaborative space if possible. So just a couple of other organizations that we work with. We've been lucky to work with a number of higher ed organizations across North America and even more globally. So again, super thankful to all of our clients for putting the trust into us and working with us so closely. I'd love to just take a quick second, and you should see a poll question that's just appeared to say, what is your biggest social media challenge today and what you're facing right now? So there's a couple of different options in the poll. If there's something else, feel free to just drop it on the chat if it's not part of the multiple choice answers. But we'd love to just hear what your biggest challenge is and maybe what you all are struggling with day to day when it comes to social. And let me just see. Lack of time or resources. Yeah, that's really a lot. I think lack of time or resources can almost be applied to every job, right? Cool. Reaching the right audience. Okay. Yeah, definitely a challenge. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. Coordinating across departments and campuses, managing comments for reputation and risk. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you all for your input on that. Yeah, definitely some great answers there. We'll look to address a lot of those questions as we sort of move along through the presentation here. So really from our lens, and at least Dan and I working together, some of the top reasons we see for leveraging social media for your higher ed brand is a couple of different items. And really one of the first things that we want to make sure that we're doing is sharing information in campus news, right? Super important for your students to know what's happening on campus. You want social to be an area where young students are going to ensure that they're getting all of the information across campus, right? So different departments may have different ways of messaging or doing this, but really as just a pillar of what social can do for your organization, it's a really easy ability to share out this information and news, and you'll be able to kind of curate that message close to how you want your brand to be perceived, or what department you're working with, how you want them to be perceived as well. The other thing is building trust in an ecosystem from a campus community perspective and looking to build engagement, right? Every school, every organization, I'm sure, wants their students or folks that are working alongside of them in different capacities. They want them engaged and want to feel that sense of pride and be engaged with the day-to-day activities. So almost like taking that news and then having the end community really effectively engaging with the content that you all are putting out in order to build that trust, build that sense of pride, and really make sure that at the end of the day, everyone is fully aware of what's going on, but they're also active participants in the different items that are happening across your organization. And then another big pillar that we see in terms of using social is recruitment of prospective students. I'm sorry. So whether that's looking more at international students, mature students, graduate students, right? Different areas where you can effectively tailor your outreach, your messaging in order to gain more traction, hopefully have more individuals excited about the prospect of joining your higher ed institution. So those are kind of the reasons that we see, and that's sort of what Dan and I work on, day to day. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into it, but just from a high level, those are some of the key goals that we're looking to address. Anyone else have anything to add here? Are there other areas that, maybe you see social as being a huge role in, or a huge part of your day to day, or something that is a huge goal for you that you're looking to accomplish through social?
I can just add to the campus community part too, is that it's really important to monitor the comments that come through, because a lot of the stuff that you post can be controversial, and you want to make sure that you're keeping your platforms a safe place, especially when it comes to Instagram, where your students are, and you want it to be somewhere that they can feel safe to come and comment or engage with your content, right? If you feel like there's too many quote unquote trolls or people that are creating a negative space based on your content, then that's something you want to eliminate. So we take a proactive approach to, if there's any hateful or harmful comments, we're making sure that we're deleting those or hiding those, and creating a space where they can have a conversation, but make sure that it's a safe one, and one that our students or our alumni or faculty and staff feel that they can be a part of.
Yeah, that's a great point. And thank you for that, Dan. We do have a couple questions in the chat. So Alyssa, trying to navigate the algorithm and actually show up on people's feeds, that's a really good question, and one that we get a lot. I know there's a lot of literature out there on the perspective algorithms, and they're often unique to each network, right? So how can we tailor the message for each individual network in order to ensure that every time we're posting, we are, and for lack of a better phrase, getting the most bang for our buck, right? And it sounds fairly straightforward, but from what we've seen, really the most effective way of doing that is paying very close attention to the type of content, or the types of content that are moving the needle for you individually as an organization, right? So a little bit later on in the presentation, we'll talk about the prospect of like benchmarking against yourself. But with that, it's also important to keep an eye on peer organizations, schools that are potentially in your ecosystem, aspirational organizations that maybe you'd want to look at. Using Emplifi to see what type of content is moving the needle for those organizations as well in your space, perhaps can allow you to get some ideas and I don't want to say steal, but lean into some of those ideas that have provided a lot of traction for your own brand, and B, maybe look at outside of the box at some of the organizations that are aspirational or peer to you, and pull some key learnings from them to try to apply into your own content strategy. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. Jeff mentioned dealing with ad campaigns on Meta's backend. So within Emplifi, we do have the ability to add in paid content. So that's something, Jeff, that we can certainly look at as well. So I'll pass it over to Dan just to talk about, I know there was some questions in the poll about like reaching audience and that being a bit of a struggle. So I'll let Dan chime in here with how Waterloo currently reaches their audience.
Yeah, so I'll talk about our 3 top platforms that we utilize. So you see Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook here. Based on our analytics and our data, those are our top 3 platforms. And I'll talk about each platform, how we what our target audience is for each one. So Instagram is our current and prospective students, the Gen Zs, and then we're seeing a growing alumni audience as our alumni gets younger and younger. We're seeing more active presence from them on Instagram. So that's our audience there. And then LinkedIn is a lot of business, government partners, alumni, faculty, and staff. So a lot of our research stories, news stories, press releases that go out daily, we like to post those on LinkedIn to reach that audience. And then Facebook, we see a large presence of international audience recruitment. Paul was mentioning that, recruitment prospective students. And also we see a lot of our community. So a lot of the Waterloo regional community lives on Facebook, and we see that content does quite well with our Facebook audience. And then just going to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about each one a little more. Instagram, I just wanted to mention how important it is to collaborate with your faculties, your departments, other areas across your university. We have a really strong student life account, Waterloo Life, that is present on Instagram, and we like to collaborate with them when it comes to all of our student-facing content. It helps us to reach a larger audience and reach our goal of reaching our student audience. Obviously, we have a large audience at the University of Waterloo. I mentioned those in the previous slides. So when it comes to reaching our students, we like to collaborate with our student life accounts, our prospective student account, faculties, departments to reach our audience as well as their audience, because we all know that collaborative feature on Instagram is a really important one for reaching and creating more engagement with the content. And then LinkedIn, talk about a little bit the emergence of vertical video. Video is being consumed more and more as we are using social on our mobile device. So LinkedIn has really stepped up their game when it comes to vertical video, and the algorithm is starting to feed more and more video on LinkedIn. So we're starting to create more content that is video-based that's being posted on LinkedIn, and we're seeing really good numbers when it comes to that. You also want to post multiple images on LinkedIn. The algorithm seems to prefer multiple images. That's the same for Instagram, the carousel feature. The algorithm likes to feed those images more to your users' feed and platforms. And then Facebook, we love the trending topics and research content. We find when it pertains to an international audience, or talks about our community, or talks about some really research that can be discussed widely and globally. That, like for example, climate change is a big one, or AI, which we are seeing a lot in our social feeds. That is one that does quite well on Facebook, just because of the global international audience that you can reach. And I'm not to say those don't do well on LinkedIn and Instagram, but Facebook and LinkedIn, we see that those global hot topics do well on those two platforms, where Instagram is more of the entertaining, light content. You obviously want to put some of your research based and your entrepreneurial content on there, but that's more of the light content, and they're looking for more of the entertainment when it comes to Instagram, and that's what we find works at the University of Waterloo.
Awesome, thank you, Dan. And really, just to kind of key in on this, the University of Waterloo team uses what's called the Emplifi Content Hub. So you can see an example on the screen here, and how Dan and his team are sort of able to drill into some of these key insights when talking about what types of content are performing well, video, carousels, right? The Content Hub will allow you to slice and dice your content and filter for top performing content, right? So whether that's looking at your own pages, or if you wanted to look at even competitive pages, you're able to filter the content for a set time, whether that's a month, a year, last week, yesterday, right? We're able to take that content and essentially rank it based around criteria that's important to your business, right? So if you're doing this for yourself, or you're doing it for competitors, it'll really help inform your content analysis and strategy of what you're ultimately putting out. So it's doubling down on what's working for you and what's working for competitors, and doing less of what's not performing well for you. And this makes it very easy and automated to take some of those key learnings away. Any questions on that before we move on? Awesome. So we'll talk a little bit about, so we've done the content analysis. We're looking at what types of content are ultimately moving the needle, looking at your own performance, looking at competitive performance and ranking those by various metrics, by media types, those types of things. Then it comes time to actually put out the content, right? So across any organization, obviously in higher ed, there's obviously numerous departments, numerous staff members working in a centralized ecosystem can be very challenging, right? Especially if you're working across multiple pages. What the Emplifi publisher attempts to do is to make it much easier and streamlined. So the ability to omni-channel post, so putting out content on multiple pages at once. For Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, we also do offer a suggested prime time to publish. So when is your audience most engaged and most actively online? And then in order to navigate all of the different departments and all of the different users that are ultimately touching social related to your organization, we do have a number of different approval flows that we can set up that are extremely customizable. So if you do have certain levels of security or checks and balances that need to be in place, we can ensure that the right folks are putting out content for you and that the correct eyeballs and checks and balances are in place before the content even hits your social channels, obviously mitigating the risk of any potential negative effects of the social that goes out. So that's what we try to do from a publishing perspective at a high level. I'll let Dan speak to how Waterloo works with that challenge daily.
Yeah, so we utilize our co-op students. We have a really popular and large co-op program at the University of Waterloo, and I'm lucky enough to have a co-op student. And a lot of our social media managers across campus utilize co-op students to schedule and schedule this type of content on using Emplifi. So it's a really good strategy that we use for anything that we know we're going to be posting. A lot of campaign stuff, our Waterloo magazine content, a lot of those captions and photos are already created 4 months, 6 months in advance. So it's easy to schedule it using Emplifi. And Paul mentioned that omni-channel publishing, you can schedule it to multiple channels at once, and that saves you a lot of time in the long run. And also for any weekend content, social media managers do want some time off too. So we want to have those weekends free. So it's good to schedule your Saturday and Sunday content as well. Or anything that's ahead, or if you're going on vacation for a week, being the summer months, it's good to schedule that as well. I just want to put a quick note there to say that if you just be careful if you're scheduling too far in advance. If your campus, if there's an emergency or in a crisis and all content needs to be paused or whatever, just make sure you go back and pause that content, or you can move it or whatnot. It's very easy to do and Emplifi to go and edit any of your scheduled posts. So if you do schedule it, you're not locked into that date and time, it's easy to go back and make edits to that content.
Awesome. So Annette had a great question in the chat. Just asking, this is kind of going back a second, but what KPIs to look at? Generally speaking, I would say like engagements is probably like the number one metric we would look at determining the success of a post. It's not the be all end all. The reason we say that is because it does kind of stretch itself across multiple channels. So I would definitely make sure that you're looking at that. But again, whatever metric you define as successful and growing, that is what we would look at. Within Emplifi, we typically will group some of the key metrics together, which we see across the board, again, generalizing across thousands of clients globally. A lot of our preset reports have the key metrics that we would look at, things like engagement, impressions, number of followers, interactions, engagement rates, right? Those are sort of what we see as the major indicators of success. And then, we don't always shift in terms of what like for different content buckets, unless we're looking at like specific videos or things of that nature. You may want to look at the amount of time stayed on a video, those types of metrics. So it is a little bit nuanced in that discussion, but if we're talking more generally, a lot of the sort of out of the box reporting is what we would recommend. Cool. So let me, oh, sorry. So yeah, so I wanted to shift gears and just ask a quick question. Is anyone in the chat is anyone at your organization leveraging UGC or user generated content in order to either publish content or highlight content that their students or staff or faculty members are doing day to day? Does anybody have any cool strategies that they're using or interesting? Cool. Yeah, it's a super important piece we see. And obviously being in higher ed, I think, you all are at an advantage in terms of having, generally speaking, pretty active participants in terms of representing the university, representing where the individuals are taking classes or going to athletic events or going to events related to their specific faculty. Emplifi makes that process of gathering that content very straightforward, so that you can ultimately build a repository of that user-generated content to ultimately use down the road. And we do see that leveraging UGC and leveraging UGC strategically does lead to much higher engagement numbers when comparing it to just typical organic content that's posted. So it's definitely a recommended strategy to begin gathering UGC and ultimately using it for different publishing opportunities, and even posting through various websites or things of that nature. So Dan has a pretty interesting specific example from U Waterloo that worked really well for them.
Yeah, so that example here was at Convocation. One of our students, quote unquote, tripped on stage. Our co-op student got kind of a front row footage of it. And it turned out the student was tripping on purpose to get views on his platform. We saw that and reached out to him through Instagram Messenger and just asked if we could create a fun little video with that theme. I'm sure you've seen it where it starts with, "Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up here." So that's where we got that from. And we got the content from the student, and of course we wouldn't have embarrassed the student had they tripped in real life, but it was on purpose trip, and we ended up creating a fun video with it that showcased our president and our chancellor really engaging with the student, trying to help him up, and ended up getting close to 3 million views. So it was a fun video that we did, and we of course put a disclaimer that the student helped us create this content, sent us some video, and they gave us approval to post it. So it was just a light, fun-hearted moment from Convocation, and it really took off, and a lot of people ended up seeing. It's just a way to get your brand out there in a fun, creative, entertaining way, which Instagram is all about. And how do we ask for kind of UGC content? Well, that's through Instagram stories. So we sometimes, obviously myself or my co-op student can't always be on campus. So a good example of that is when we had Northern Lights visible in last summer. There was a lot of Northern Lights exposures at night, and we were on campus. We just put a photo that someone sent us and just put a poll or a question saying, does anyone else have any more content or videos of photos of the Northern Lights with encompassing the University of Waterloo? And we got so many submissions, and from that we took the best ones and created a carousel post, also created a fun video with a Coldplay song, and those videos did all really well. So it's just an easy way to engage with your audience, and students want to see their content on your platform because you have a larger reach, and they're excited to see their photos or the videos that they've submitted. So if they are able to submit that content, you can curate it. You can just post it as is organically, and you'll see that type of content. I don't want to say it's easy, but it's pretty easy to get that content, post it, and you'll see that your engagement and your impressions do really well.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely see higher engagement on UGC across the board. I will also mention like Emplifi does have a UGC module that will allow you to ingest incoming UGC content around like if you're tagged, if certain hashtags are used, and it can sort of help build that repository as well. So lots of different ways to get that data in front of you, and then of course, ask permission ultimately to use it, which to Dan's point, students are usually pumped to do because they'll get their name out there a little bit more. Cool. So all this to say, so we've talked about looking at content and analyzing your own content, sort of what's working well, what's not, scheduling content, planning it, making sure that you're efficient in that regard, freeing up time for further analysis, talking about UGC as part of a strategy. This is sort of where you all as individuals working in higher ed need to sort of put the pieces together. And the unified analytics tool within Emplifi really helps to do that. So we have a number of different reporting options when it comes to our platform at Emplifi. But to a question posted earlier in the chat about like, where do I start? What are the most important metrics? The unified analytics module makes it very easy because it will basically preload a lot of these reports for you, and you can hand select the time and the data source that will ultimately fill these reports, right? So it really does sort of take down that process, and yeah, it really will help ultimately save time. I'm sorry, I did see a question pop up.
I think it was the same question that you answered. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry, just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. So yeah, Dan's going to talk a little bit more about specifically about how they report at U Waterloo. But yeah, if anyone else has any questions, let us know in the chat for sure.
Yeah, so we look at, sorry, I just jumped ahead there. We look at impressions, engagements, and engagement rates. So impressions are who's seeing your content, how many views is your content getting sent to your users, and how many are actually seeing it. And then engagements are who's reacting to it, who's commenting, who's sharing, who's actually doing something with that content you've posted. So that's the most important one for us. Yes, eyeballs on your content is important, but usually you have about 3 seconds or less to really hook them in. That's what they tell you on Instagram when it comes to Reels. Those first 3 seconds are more important than anything. So if you can hook them in with an important tagline, important caption, then they'll be more invested in what you're actually posting, and they'll have a better chance of engaging with that content. And then of course your engagement rate is your engagement divided by your impressions multiplied by 100. So that's what we look at. And we use something called a social matrix, and it looks at our impressions versus our engagement rate, and it gives you a good paints a picture of where all your kind of all your posts live on the social matrix. That's the next slide. I'll maybe go to that now and show you what it looks like. So we do all of our reporting. We go 4 months back because of how our terms work at the University of Waterloo. So we have a fall term, a winter term, and a spring term. As mentioned, we have a very popular co-op program. So we have kind of the full year cycle of university life at the University of Waterloo. So we look back at the previous 4 months. So this is an example of our winter 2025 content when it comes to Instagram. And you can see on the top right, that's the stars. So those are the ones where you're getting a lot of eyeballs, a lot of impressions on your content, but people are also engaging with your content as well. So you got a higher engagement rate. On the top left is your niche. So you've got a higher engagement rate. That means not as many people might be seeing your content, but more people are engaging with it and not. And then exposure is you've got a lot of eyeballs on it, but not as many people are reacting or commenting or sharing that particular post. And then the rest, not to say that those are failures, those are just posts that just didn't take off as much. And if, like the previous slide says, it's okay to fail. So if your post did not perform well, that's okay. You learn from it, you tweak the content, and you try again. That's 50% of our content is probably going to be where we want it to be, but probably 5%, 10% of what we put out there is going to actually go viral and is going to take off. So we're all here to just throw out and try to figure out what works, and that's what Emplifi really helps us do with the data, is create strategies and content based on what we're seeing from the numbers. So if we're seeing that the UGC content is doing well, which it always does, then we're going to continue that in our next 4 months of creating content. If we're seeing that, some of stock images or content that isn't really utilizing important content, then you're going to see that those numbers are a little bit lower. So you make your data, you make your content based on your data from the previous 4 months, and that really helps us to tell our story and create our content.
Yeah, that's awesome, Dan. Thank you for sharing that. That matrix is very, very cool, and yeah, really key to the overall Emplifi message in terms of using that data to inform, what your strategy should be moving forward, because it is very hard to pin it down. So having that through guiding principle can be super effective. I get this question a lot when I'm speaking to not just higher ed clients, but clients across the board. It's like, what should we be benchmarking against? What is a good post for us? What are some of the numbers that make this good or bad? Well, this is some data that we put together. So this is actually put together by Emplifi's data team. So you can see the numbers up on the screen. If you're working at an organization, please keep in mind, like, this is all relative. This is looking at a large pool of data. If you're above or below these metrics, I wouldn't stress too much. What I'd want to say here is, if you are working in higher ed, the biggest thing that you can do is benchmark against yourself, as Dan sort of just went through, right? It's really important to understand, are we moving in the right direction? Is our content continuing to improve? And the best way to do that is sort of working through that. So looks like we have another poll question. Okay. Cool. So in terms of the numbers here, again, keep in mind, this is done through our data team. It's a little bit larger pool of data, but just some numbers to take away if you all are interested in seeing what we see as sort of the benchmark for education on social media accounts.
I just want to mention too, when we benchmark, we of course look at the previous 4 months for our following, if we've increased following since the last 4 months. But when we look at our engagement rate over time, we usually compare season to season. So we compare winter 2025 versus winter 2024, just because of what happens on campus is usually cyclical. So September to December, that's back to school. So the content's going to be back to school, orientation, fall convocation, homecoming, content like that. Whereas, more outdoor content, students coming back to class, new students coming in, that type of content, versus winter. Those that aren't in Ontario might not know, but we've got 4 seasons. So in winter, it snows on the ground. So campus might not be as pretty. It is if it's snowing, but if it's the slushy type of snow rain, we try to, create content that's going to be based on our campaigns. We got Global Futures content. We have an On It campaign. So when we're comparing our benchmarks, we're looking at season versus season, as opposed to, fall versus winter when we're looking at our benchmarking.
Yeah, that's a great point. Cool. So again, just to wrap it all up, and then we'll leave some time for questions. And again, thank you so much, Dan, for all of your practical insight here. Super, super helpful. Really, the key here that we see using Emplifi to understand the data at your fingertips and help inform your strategy. So really knowing your audience, like, who are you working with? Who are you trying to target? Who are the folks that are actually engaging with your content? The more you can understand them, the better. You want to ensure that we talked about, making the data or using the data to make those informed decisions, whether it comes to strategy, whether it comes to actually posting content, when it comes to reporting as well, like just making sure that you are always looking into the data versus whether it's yourself, whether it's competitors. Super important to look through that. And then leveraging and leaning into the data that's the content that's almost created for you, right? The UGC creative content, leaning into that is what we see as being very, very successful from an engagement perspective. So, three kind of takeaways that we would sort of wrap this all up today and to kind of keep as we're going through are those three things that I just mentioned. So, Dan, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything else or if you wanted to open it up to questions.
No, I think we touched on everything. I think the biggest thing was just at the end there was just the reporting and really, really using those numbers to help create your strategy and your data and your content moving forward. So you touched on that, and I think we touched on that quite a bit. So I think that's great. I really appreciate it, Paul, and I think we'll open it to any questions.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Any questions in the chat, or anybody want to discuss anything that maybe we missed or you're hoping to hear a little bit more on? Awesome. So, Sher, I don't know if do we have any other questions?
We have a few questions.
Okay.
So let's see what we can do here. We have a question from Jen. Let's do this one first. Are the engagement rates based on impression or followers? Is probably a question for Dan.
Yeah. Paul, did you want to take that?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, that's based on our impressions. So it's an engagement rate based on impressions. So like the formula that was shown is your engagement rate is your engagement that you get on that post divided by your impressions multiplied by 100. So that gives you your engagement rate, and those are the benchmarks that we look at. So I believe our engagement rate for Instagram was just over 2% last winter. LinkedIn, we were at about 9%, which is a really good engagement rate. And then Facebook, we were about 6 or 7%. So that means that 7% of what you're posting for that content is engaging with your content.
Great.
Nice. Thanks, Dan. Hope that answers your question, Jen. We got another question from Denise. Would like to hear more about ways to gather student-generated content.
Yeah, so I mentioned the Instagram story example. We rely on that one heavily, but we also rely on our co-op students. They've got the pulse on their student body, and they're well connected when it comes to students across campus. So we rely on our students to come up with content to strategy. I always want our students to come up with, I always tell them, I want you to come up with 4 real ideas per term. So that would be 1 per month. They're with us for 4 months. So that's getting out there. And, we can do our homework at night when we're scrolling through our phone and seeing other reels. But the students will really know what's going to work and what's going to kind of take off when it comes to impressions and engagement. So we have our students go out there and look for content, talk with other students, and talk with their fellow classmates to see what kind of content is going to help elevate our platforms.
Nice, thank you. And then we have a question here about integration between website content and social content, and does Emplifi support this integration?
I don't know if Paul wants to talk about any of that.
Yeah, so between website and social, the main driver there that Emplifi would help with, there's a couple of different things that we didn't touch on as much today, but UGC is one of them. So we do have a lot of clients that will post UGC content onto different areas of their websites in order to display, what's happening there. We do also provide like chatbot offerings and those types of items that do live on the website. So any of that integration can sort of be handled through Emplifi. So it depends on who we're working with. Sometimes we see those teams are a little bit siloed. Sometimes we do see a little bit of cross organization there between like the UGC side or maybe even care type content through chatbots and things of that nature. So there is a link between the two that can be managed through Emplifi. It really just does determine on the specific use case of each organization.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. I think we are running out of time, so I would just like to thank everybody for joining in today. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the chat. We will respond via email and, try our best to answer your question. There will be a survey launched at the end of this webinar, so please feel free to respond. And I would just really like to thank Dan again for joining us and sharing the insights. I hope everybody found it very helpful. And thank you, Paul, for doing a great job today.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining, and thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it, and I hope we learned some things about social and Emplifi today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Bye.